Today I'm going to talk to you about how to subtract decimals. And so, as a reminder to what a decimal is, it's basically a fraction in numeral form. And what I mean by this is, here's an example of a decimal. We have the number 5.23. This right here is a decimal. And of course, within a decimal, you have different places. You have the hundredths place and the tenths. Place and so on. Now that you know what a decimal is, we can finally get on to subtracting decimals. And so, when subtracting decimals, it should always look like this. So you have the decimal points stacked right on top of each other. Then you have numbers on both sides of the decimal point. And make sure that when you're subtracting decimals, you have to be careful because the order matters in which you subtract them. So you can't just put any number on top or any number on the bottom. You have to do it accordingly to what the problem says. So if a problem says that someone has a certain amount of money and they lost a certain amount, you'll just subtract the money that they lost from the money that they already had. You don't do it the other way around. Okay, so in subtracting decimals, you have the decimal points stacked right on top of each other and numbers on both sides. So this right here just stands for number. Okay. And now let's do a problem. Let's say that in addition to this number right here, 5.23, you also have the number 2.25. This right here is also a decimal. And what I want to do is subtract these two numbers. Okay, so as I said, we will have to line them up. And for this problem, I want 2.25 subtracted from 5.23. So what I mean by this is that you have the number 5.23 and I want to take away 2.25. I don't want 2.25 minus 5.23. This right here is wrong. I want this. Okay? So we do this by putting the 5.23 on top and the 2.25 on the bottom. And so in our hundredths place, we have the numbers 3 and 5. The problem here is we can't just subtract them right away because the 5 on the bottom is larger than the 3 right here on the top. And this is in the hundredths place. And so what we'll have to do is borrow. And so what borrowing is just taking a certain amount from the next place over and using it to subtract. And so since we don't have enough in the hundredths place, we would cross this out and cross out the next place too. But as we see, there's also not enough in the tenths place, which is right here, because there's a 2 on the bottom, and so if we take away some, there won't be enough. So I have to look to the next place, which is the ones place, and in the ones place there's a 5, so there's definitely enough to take. So we cross this out, and if we take 1 away, there's only 4 left here, And if we put a 1 in the tens place, we would get a 12, but we want to save 1 for the other place. So let's make that 11. And then in the hundredths place, there would be a 13. And so 13 minus 5 is 8. Everything stays the same, just like when you're subtracting whole numbers. 13 minus 5 is 8 in the hundredths place. 11 minus 2 is 9 in the tenths place. Then you put down the decimal point right under the other 2. And then you do 4 minus 2, which is just 2. And so the result is the number 2.98. Now, let's do a real-life word problem. Let's say there's a boy named Zach. And he has $20. But now, let's say that Zach goes to the candy store and he wants this candy that costs $5.25. So the candy costs $5.25. Okay, so as I said, the order matters here when subtracting. So because he starts off with $20 and we want to know how much he will have left after buying the candy, we'll have to put the $20 on top and then the $5.25 on the bottom. Remember, you have to line up these decimal points just like we did up here. Okay? And so here in the in the hundredths place actually, we have a 0 and a 5, so again there's not enough. So we look to the next place, not enough. The next place, also not enough. Then finally we have this 2 all alone, so there's enough. So when we borrow 1 from the 2, there's only 1 left here. Then there's 9 here, a 9 there, and a 10 here. And so, as we would do subtracting whole numbers, 10 minus 5 is 5, 9 minus 2 is 7, 9 minus 5 is 4, and then we just drop down to 1. And so, after buying this candy, Zach has $14.75.